It's been 2 years since TCU faced off against Colorado, and something tells me that the Frogs have not forgotten. It's revenge time. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, 817 Rays. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, if you put down a $5 bet and your bet wins, you get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. We're moving into our Colorado phase now. We're putting Arizona State behind us slightly. We'll, of course, reflect on some of the things that happened, but we're moving forward into Colorado because the game's just 3 days away. We'll close out today's episode by taking a look at an offensive star who returned to practice and what exactly does this mean for TCU. If the game gets down to the fourth quarter, in segment 2, we'll take a look at why that favors TCU after last week's matchup did not favor TCU. But this whole thing gets kicked off with a little bit of revenge because it's been over 2 years since TCU and Colorado have faced off against each other. But something tells me that TCU hasn't forgotten. I'm sure fans haven't forgotten. I don't think that coaches have forgotten. This was a devastating loss for the Frogs, but it was also the pivotal and, in my opinion, the most notable victory for Deion Sanders as a coach on any level. The reason I stress that is I had the pleasure of covering Deion Sanders when he was at Jackson State. I was hosting Locked On Horned Frogs, and I was hosting Locked On HBCU. And now that I'm hosting Locked On Horned Frogs, I get to reflect on some of the things that I saw over those year and some change. See, I didn't join the show until November of Deion's first year, so I was able to watch it as a fan, but I was able to really watch it as an analyst in his second and final year with the Jackson State Tigers. In my opinion, every single one of the biggest victories in Deion's career comes in the opening week. You look at his first game. Now, he was technically hired in the spring. Who really talks about the spring? So the spring of 2020, that was an odd time for college football. No one's talking about that. His true debut came in the fall 2021. And the first game was Jackson State versus FAMU. I don't think anybody knew what Deion Sanders and Jackson State were going to be about. I don't think anybody knew what FAMU was going to be about. But at the end of the year, we find out that these were the two best teams in Black college football, or in the SWAC. There ended up being a better team in Black college football later that year. But anyway, that was a pivotal matchup that you won. But I think the biggest win of his Jackson State tenure came against FAMU again. They played in the opening game. This time, it wasn't a we don't know about this team or this team because it was FAMU's first year in the SWAC that year too, right? So the second year rolls around and everybody's waiting. This is the game of the year before it even kicked off. And I thought that the way that Jackson State handled FAMU in that game, it was the biggest win of Deion Sanders' career. I think you could point to another game against Campbell. I can't remember all of how I felt around that, but I do remember how important that Jackson State versus FAMU was. They were once again the top two teams in the SWAC. So everybody knew what was at stake. Everybody knew what we were looking for. And honestly, we wanted to see if anybody could beat Jackson State because through Deion's tenure, it was really Jackson State and everybody else. But FAMU was the only team that was close within the conference. He wasn't able to win the Celebration Bowl, which is the Black National Championship, in either of his attempts. He lost both of those games. So those weren't wins that you could put in his resume. But those first week wins, that's where I felt like he lived. Then he went to Colorado. And I'm sorry for giving you all of this background because I know that you are a part of the background. But as someone who was just sitting watching, that is the game that defines his time at Colorado. Time goes on and you start to realize, oh, well, Colorado really isn't that good. And neither is TCU if you're talking about the 2023 season. It's really like neither one of these teams was that good. But at the time, wasn't nobody trying to hear that because what made the Jackson State versus FAMU game special is that Deion Sanders stepped into a game where it felt like, does he have his opponent outmatched? Felt like a toss-up. Felt like it could go either way. Maybe that was just hope. Maybe that was just, I don't know. But I do know that when they faced Jackson State, or Jackson State faced off against FAMU, it felt like a little bit of uncertainty. You were interested. You were interested, not on the any given Saturday type of interested. You were interested from a pure I know football standpoint. When Colorado went against TCU, nobody gave him a chance. So now the most impressive victories up to that point were Deion Sanders, teams being led into situations where it could go either way. Everybody expected TCU, the defending, if you want to say it that way, runner-up to the national championship from the previous season. They were supposed to come in and stomp Colorado. Colorado ain't been worth nothing in forever. So they were supposed to come in and beat Colorado bad. It turns out that, TCU just wasn't good. So this idea that just because they were good the year prior means that they should come in and just beat them, A, that didn't happen, and B, we saw why as the season progressed. But Colorado also didn't look that good. Now, a Colorado fan may point to a different game as the trademark victory for Deion Sanders. I'm pointing to that one because that's the one that made the most noise. It's still his only victory over a top 25 team. This was, in my opinion, a defining moment for his tenure because it was the first game that he coached on the FBS level. And it was a defining moment for the TCU campaign, where in 2023, right off of the heels of a national championship appearance, everything and it imploded. That was a really tough moment, in my opinion, because everybody had these expectations for TCU, and they didn't go away right after. Because when TCU lost, it was just, oh man, maybe Colorado's for real. And I think I heard a couple of people say, hey, guys, TCU lost a lot. They're not who we thought they would be. Well, now they are. Now they are who we thought they would be. And they're a team that should come in and they should beat Colorado. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be an easy game because Colorado does seem to have some fight to them. But I think that this is the time where you need to get your revenge. And I know you may say there's no Shedeur Sanders. There's no Travis Hunter. And in most cases, I would say, yeah, you're right. The core of this team is different. That's, of course, going to change as college football goes around. Like you're just going to lose recruits to the portal, to the league. You're going to lose a lot. So it's tough to just keep a band of teams or a band of players together over the course of 2 years. It can be tough for that. But at the end of the day, you got Deion Sanders. And I think that's all that matters because Deion is one of the very few coaches that I can ever remember where he is the face of the program no matter what. He is one of, I'm going to say he's the first person brought up no matter what. He's the soundbite no matter what. You have to remember, for the last 2 years, Colorado has had a player who was projected to be a first-round quarterback. I know that it didn't happen that way for Shedeur, but for years we talked about him as a first-round quarterback. And he also had the Heisman Trophy winner, a guy who came in as a two-way star and lived up to all of the hype that he was given. Somebody who was the highest recruit in Jackson State history, the number one recruit in the country coming out of high school. Travis Hunter was born to be a star, and he continued to be a star. You had that on your team, and I would still say Deion Sanders was the biggest star on that team because he's Deion Sanders. At the end of the day, he is Deion Sanders. It doesn't matter if he is a player. It doesn't matter if he's a coach. He is one of the most noteworthy players who's ever graced a football field. And I'm talking about from my daddy's time to my time, and it'll probably be true in my kids' times. He's Deion Sanders. So when all of that is happening, I'm sure you're going to see reflections of that going in the week. I'm sure that Sonny Dykes hasn't forgot it. He talked about how that team is, or this team is deeper than that team. But at the end of the day, this feels like a get your lick back moment because that was such a devastating and kind of embarrassing loss. It was Colorado. No one had any expectations. You had a lot of expectations, and it was the first week of the season. Unfortunately, people don't really go back and look at it with hindsight and say you were just in a down year. I think that going and getting your lick back is motivation. I think that you should feel inspired because of what just happened on Friday night against Arizona State. There's a lot of motivation for TCU going into this game. If you can't get motivated for this type of game, you don't need to be there. And I can't remember who it was. It was some player who said that, which basically was like, if you can't get motivated for this game, you don't need to play. And I think that this is that type of matchup where I don't know how many players from the 2023 team are on either side of the football teams, right? Like, I don't know. But the coaches are present. And these are coaches who I think are good motivators. I think they are someone who has a good feel on what the pulse of their team is. Sonny Dykes has to get this team together. Whether it's trying to bounce back from last week, whether it's trying to get revenge from 2 years ago, that might not work as well with, the limited amount of people who were there on that team. But I think that it's still, still there. If you can hit enough pressure points around the team, you can get that felt in each position on each side of the ball. But at the end of the day, trying to knock off Deion Sanders. Trying to get a little lick back from what happened that first game. And I don't know if it's going to end up being a close game. I don't know if it's going to be a wide game. But if it is a close game, advantage goes to TCU. Advantage goes to TCU. And I'm going to explain why. It's drastically different than their Arizona State game as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda, and Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From the footwork to the breath work, athletes sweat all of the details, and Mazda brings that same intention to how we craft cars. And listen, I don't care if you're talking about the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. I don't care what you were looking at. This is a ride that allows you to not just make it from point A to point B safely. Yes, old heads, I get it. That's what's important. But for the young ones and the people who like to live with a little bit, Mazda going to get you there in style too. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. And honestly, I don't think most people can name all of their financial accounts or what they're worth, whether it's a 401k, properties, investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you tend to leave money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. No more going from that app to this app to that site to this app and to this site to that one. That's like you got like 5 apps trying to manage your financials. First off, you're not even having the energy to go check every single one of those, but you do have the energy to pull out your phone. And you can click on one app. And that's what Monarch Money does for you. It's simple, it's plain, it's easy. Don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com and you get half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year when you use the code LOCKEDONCollege. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Big 12 or Locked On Buffs, because you want to get to know your enemy. Go ahead and check them out. Tomorrow we will have our crossover Thursday, so I'm really looking forward to that. But if the game comes down to the fourth quarter, this is an advantage to TCU. And I understand Colorado is 2-3. Colorado is a team that's not looked at as being very good. So you're wondering, why would the game be close? Well, the truth of the matter is Colorado has played teams close this year. They've just played some teams close this year. So you don't want to ever count them out. And I think that they played Georgia Tech tough. I think they played Houston tough, though the schedule or the score won't reflect that. They played BYU tough, really tough last week. So yeah, what you're looking at is a team that's not just going to get blown out the water by everybody. If you're able to blow them out, then more power to you. But this is a team that you have to watch out for in a 60-minute game. But the thing about it is, it's not like Arizona State. Last week, last week, TCU went against a team in Arizona State that was a monster when it came to the fourth quarter. That's where they lived. And we saw it when we watched that game on Friday night. Arizona State made TCU the latest victim of a Sun Devil hot fourth quarter. Colorado, on the other hand, that's not what they do. They're not very good in the fourth quarter. They don't close out games very well. So TCU is going against a team that is the exact opposite of what they faced a week ago. Arizona State, strong fourth quarter. You get them down there, doesn't matter if you have a lead, it's not safe. You want to make sure that you continue to stack. Of course, that's the mentality no matter what. But at the same time, Colorado in the fourth quarter, I don't think they're taking advantage of mistakes. I think they're making mistakes of their own, because I was watching the BYU Colorado game and it ended with an interception. So no one's going to talk about this. But for the second time this season, Deion Sanders, in my opinion, has had terrible clock management, like absolutely horrendous clock management. It happened in the first game versus Georgia Tech, and he threw a whole fit. Well, when should I have called a timeout? When should I do that? Whatever, right? Say what you want to say. To me, you had to call a timeout some point in that. And it ain't on me to say. It ain't on me to decide. But I do feel like you were supposed to call one there. Then against BYU just a week ago, what do? Fourth quarter, 2-minute drill. You're taking 20, 25 seconds off the clock between plays, and you have timeouts in your pocket. You don't have to have this rushed moment that you're not really rushing, like you're just actually lollygagging and allowing the time to just drip, 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 and you don't have as much. But you throw an interception before you get down the field, so no one really wants to talk about it because it doesn't feel relevant. I am going to talk about it, though. If this game comes down to the fourth quarter, if Colorado has the ball with a chance to win this game, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you better hope, if you're a Colorado fan, that the game does not come down to clock management, because I don't think it was handled well against against BYU. I don't think it was handled well against BYU. Don't think it was handled well against Georgia Tech. This tells me that when you're down in the wire, when you're down and it's in a clutch, and we need to count on Deion Sanders to handle the clock the right way, it's not happening. And listen, I say that you should expect some close games. They lost to Houston 20-36. And that was a big loss, right? 16 points. That's basically 2, maybe even 3 possessions, depending on where you're at. But you lose to you lose to Georgia Tech 27-20. You lose to BYU 24-21. So those are 2 of your 3 losses that were had by 1 score. And against Georgia Tech, you look at it, they just didn't have a good fourth quarter. They did not have a good fourth quarter. And sometimes the defense does a decent job, but fourth quarter against against Georgia Tech, they score a touchdown on the first drive of the fourth quarter. Let's see when that started. Started at the 14 seconds left in the third. Score a touchdown. Then you have a punt. Then you have the end of game, and that featured the really poor clock management. So that's the story walking out of the debut. Bad clock management. That's the fourth quarter struggle. Okay, let's keep it pushing. Against Houston, honestly, it was the third quarter that cost them, but they just also weren't that good in that second half, just in general. Let's look at here. You go in, technically only had one possession in the third quarter. 3 and out, 2 yards. First possession in the fourth quarter, 3 plays, -2 yards. Interception on the third one. 3 and out on your next possession, 0 yards. They got some momentum. 6 plays this time, 5 yards. Okay. 6 plays, a touchdown. By this point, it's already 14-33, and you only have 6 minutes left on the clock. Then you have an interception. In the fourth quarter, Colorado touched the ball 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. They had 2 turnovers, a turnover on downs, 1 touchdown, and a punt. Y'all hear me? 2 interceptions. They start and end the fourth quarter with interceptions. You end up having a touchdown within there. That's not good handling. It's not good handling in the fourth quarter. Then you look at this last loss against BYU. Against BYU, you actually played them really good. And Colorado had it neck and neck. They were taking it, they were actually up. They were up 14-3 at one point. So, yeah, BYU battled back and they took the lead. But going into the fourth quarter, Colorado was up 21-17. And it's looking like, all right, things getting a little thick. We're going to see what happens. BYU responds with a touchdown at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Punt, 4 plays. Punt, 3 plays. 4 plays, interception, plus terrible clock management. You see the habit here. When they lose, oftentimes they lose with critical moments, critical plays, not making those plays and making mistakes instead. Colorado is going to give you things in the fourth quarter. Now, Arizona State, they lived up to the fourth quarter hype. They come in, they play well, they get points, they take points away from you. That's what TCU had to face a week ago. This week, charming compared to that. The defense is still going to be tough. I think the defense has been stout during the fourth quarter, but the offense hasn't done anything. The offense hasn't done anything. They have 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter, I believe, against in your losses. Just not good football. Quick in and out. 1 4-play drive spent $2:41 on the clock. That's odd. You had a 3-play drive, 1:30 off the clock. The interception only went 59 seconds, but we really don't care about the timing on the interception. Disappointing, but very promising if you are a TCU fan. Because to me, this is a moment that you can take away from them no matter what else happens. If you can keep this game close, which you should, I think you should keep this game close at the worst. You keep this game close and you end up being a victor, in my opinion. Now, to push forward, we're going to close out by taking a look at Kevorian Barnes. And we're talking about being victors. I think that Barnes is a big contributor to them being victors against Colorado on Saturday if he's able to play. Let's talk about that as we continue and close out today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar that's dedicated to your team's favorite fan base. You know, the one where you can go in and it's all your team and you don't have to worry about any outsiders. That's not the same as some of these bigger sports bars where everybody has their own team. You see a jersey from this one, a jersey. It's never the same. Square helps the businesses that have you and have your back. So, doesn't matter if it's a sports bar, doesn't matter if it's a deli, doesn't matter if it's a cookie store, doesn't matter. Whatever it is, Square helps local businesses. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network, and basketball is here this month. October 21st, I believe it is the official tip-off of the season. So if you're a basketball head, let's get ready. Let's get ready. Football is already in the thick of it. Man, this has been a phenomenal month. The first month of football has been everything I thought it would be. FanDuel allows you to make money while also reveling in the moment. Nothing better than making a little bit of cash on things that you're already going to watch, things that you already know about. Go with a Tua Tagovailoa or a Patrick Mahomes or a Jalen Hurts or a Matt Stafford or a Jonathan Taylor. These are all things. Or you can just go with teams. Doesn't matter. Individual teams. As long as you put down a $5 bet and you're new to FanDuel, you get $300 back in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. Go ahead and go to FanDuel.com today and use the app now. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on the Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Kevorian Barnes is back at practice, and this is the best news that you could have got for TCU because I feel like they have missed Barnes over the last 2 weeks. I think that it was more apparent against Arizona State than it was against SMU, but I saw it. I felt it. I thought that they did a good job getting pop plays against the Mustangs, but that physicality was missing. That physicality to go in and just punch you in the mouth, it was different. It was not there. I think that you could make the argument that speed was helpful against SMU, but I don't think that there's any substitute for just punching somebody in the mouth repeatedly. I just don't. And that's what Kevorian Barnes has the capability of being for the TCU offense. They can be a smash mouth team if you want to be. And it brings me to the point of what Sonny Dykes is looking for out of TCU. 35 to 40 rushing attempts. Okay, now I'm going to be honest with you. That's a lofty goal, okay? If you want to run 35 to 40 times that day, let's see if you've ever done it. So I have the numbers right here. Against Arizona State, they ran the ball 25 times, and that accounted for 6 sacks. Hey, I wish I could stand up. I'd be out the frame, kind of looking like Wizard Kelly with his head cut off, but it grinds my gears that sack yardage is used against the running game. It grinds my gears. I get it. The ball didn't go out in the air. I would either A, leave sacks off of the total yardage, maybe just make a net yardage category where you can go with total yards and then subtract the sack yards from there, or I'd put it on the passing attack because it's a passing play. It is a passing play. It shouldn't go on the yards, in my opinion. I just think it should be its own separate category. But if I had to pick, hey, we're going to put the sack yards and we're going to use it against either the passing game or the running game. Which one do you think we should do? Oh, it's a sack? How about you put it on the passing game? That's just the way that I look at it. Thank you for allowing me to be on my soapbox. I'm going to now step down. You can now see my entire head. This is Sonny Dykes' comment saying he wants to run the ball 35 to 40 times. Thank you to Steven Johnson, who is a part of the Fort Worth Star Telegram and was present. Against North Carolina, TCU ran the ball 35 times. Against Abilene Christian, they ran the ball 28 times. Against SMU, you ran the ball 37 times. Against Arizona State, you ran the ball 25. I would assume that when he says, Coach Dykes says, I want to run the ball 25 to 30 times, I'm going to, hey, call me crazy. I'm going to assume that he's not accounting for Josh Hoover scrambling. I just don't think that he does it enough for me to sit here and say he's definitely going to give me 3 to 4 runs a game as a scrambler. Now, designed runs, that's cool. Like that 4th and 5 versus SMU, we can rock with that. But saying we dropped back and he didn't see anything, so he took off, and that's going to help your rush yards, but it's not going to necessarily fall in line with what your rush plan is. I don't think so. I think you're talking about designed runs only. You didn't get anywhere close to that against Arizona State. Now, part of that is because he felt the need to abandon the run. If your coach, listen, if your coach ever tells you that we're abandoning the run or we had to abandon the run, which is what he said after that game versus Arizona State, and you were up for most of it, that means the rushing attack sucked. Just did. Means it wasn't firing on all cylinders. Doesn't have to be the running back's fault. It could be the offensive line fault. Whatever it is, the running game was not working so much that Sonny Dykes said, yeah, we had to abandon the running game. And it wasn't because anybody was injured. It probably shouldn't have been because somebody was gassed. Instead, it was all about the fact that no matter what they did, TCU could not run the football. That's concerning. Kevorian Barnes' return, to me, should help that. I think that Barnes is extremely tough. I think that he's the type of guy who will excel when you put him in the trenches and it's dirty. I think you could still get constant yards from him. He's not going to be the guy who's going off tackle all the time. It's just not him. He's going to be somebody who wants to hit you. I think that he has the size to handle some of the struggles in the offensive line. It's not a fix of everything, but it's definitely a reason to be optimistic. You could have used him against Arizona State. You could have used him against SMU. You could have, but instead, you had to work with what you had, and you went with Battle, you went with Payne, you went with Palmer, you went with Denman, and I think you like the guys. But I've said this a million times. I've said it a million times, and I think that the last week specifically, but the last 2 weeks, in my opinion, they showcased there's no replacement for a guy. If you are a player who is one of the best at the position, if you're extremely valuable to the team, yes, we can sit here and act like you're expendable. Everybody's expendable, da 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 da. But how many traded that guy and got that guy back? I'm talking about the Stephon Diggs to Justin Jefferson. I'm talking about the Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. I'm talking about just going away. There's more people who get rid of A.J. Brown and get Treylon Burks than there are people who get rid of Stephon Diggs and get Justin Jefferson. These are not the norms. These are not the norms. And I understand that this isn't a trade of any sorts, but the point is when Kevorian Barnes goes down with injury, I know you have a lot of running backs. You got a litany of them. I call it variety pack. Them and the offensive, with the wide receivers. Variety pack. But there's only one that's the big dog in there, and that's Kevorian Barnes. I'll be able to watch. I think it's interesting. Cade Bennett said that the offensive line was disrupted by the hostile environment. We'll pay attention to these things. We will. But to me, that running attack needs Kevorian Barnes back. We don't know if he's going to play. We don't know yet. Coach Dykes says that if they had to play today, he wouldn't play. Neither would Eric McAllister. I'm not overly worried about McAllister. I don't think that Dwyer is going to have that type of game again either. But if they played today, they wouldn't play. That's okay. The game is until Saturday. But I'll be back on Thursday. So, I don't know. Think you should come kick it with me. Come kick it with Kevin from Locked On Buffs. We're going to be talking about the game. We're going to be talking about some of the pivotal matchups. So you'll be able to hear what he's looking for as well as what I'm looking for on Thursday's episode. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.